Okay, this is the second video in synthesis, moving on to ES2. I'm going to add another synth this time, and like I say, it'll be software instrument ES2 from this list, which is about halfway down, and I'll open that up. Alternatively, don't forget, you can create a blank software instrument track and find it in the instrument list of your inspector. On a blank track, simply hit to where it says Instrument, select, and click on your plugin from there. Great, okay. The first thing you want to do, just like we did with RetroSynth, is initialize the setting. Don't forget that wipes it clean and gets rid of any kind of pre-connections or any kind of routing that might have been there in the first place to create the default sound. So, initialize setting, that'll wipe it clean, and we're left with this. Great. Now, just like with RetroSynth, I have multiple oscillators to start with. Here is oscillator 1, this kind of torpedo-shaped kind of background here, and 2 dials. Here's oscillator 2, and here's oscillator 3. I can turn them all on and off by clicking on the 1, 2, and 3, and create a blend between them with this kind of triangle here. If I take it all the way to the top, I'll only hear oscillator 1. Bring it over here, I'll only hear oscillator 2. And let's do something different for oscillator 3, maybe a noise wave. I'll bring it to the bottom, where we only hear noise. I can then adjust this to create a blend of the 3. Good. I can then, if I'd like to, transpose each individual oscillator to produce different pitches. For example, I might want this one an octave higher. If I take it up by 12 to there, I'll then have one that's an octave higher. But I can set this to any semitone within a range of about 3 octaves. You may wish to do, for example, a perfect fifth, which would be 7 semitones. Or a perfect fourth, 5 semitones. You can also do cents, just like on RetroSynth, which are percentages or percentiles of a whole tone, of a whole semitone, where we can go plus or minus 50% to get a slightly sharper sound. If I set this quite extreme like this, we get quite a diverse and detuned kind of sound. But if we do it very slightly, for something like, for example, 3%, there's a little bit of width without sounding too kind of bog standard. Great. Those are my oscillators, and these are the same on every synthesizer. You always start off with oscillators generating waveforms. If you don't start off with that, it's not a synthesizer, it's a sampler, because it's an audio file. If it's generating the sound within the plugin, that is a synthesizer. Great, now just like on RetroSynth, we have our filter next. We're still in subtractive synthesis using the exact same methods, but here we've got a slightly more complex setup. Just like on RetroSynth, we have cutoff, we have resonance, and we can choose our filter type here. Low, high, peak, band reject, or band pass. All the ones you really need to worry about are the top 2, low and high pass. These are the most common ones by far. You also have a drive dial here. This is just to add some distortion if you'd like to, but I tend to not. There is also a second filter here that we can see with just the kind of faint outline of a 2 and a faint line out of 1. This area is filter 1. This area is filter 2. And we can blend between them with this dial here. Now the reason we've got 2 is, again, it gives you more opportunity to complete more complex sounds, where you might have some waves that are low passed and some that are high passed or band passed, and you get different kind of results. I'm going to stick with just one filter for this one. Just like before, I can adjust my cutoff and resonance to achieve a kind of different character to the sound. I'll stick with a low pass, and I'll keep my cutoff high, and I'll gradually bring it lower. Let's try a higher resonance, and don't forget resonance is simply the boost at the point of cutoff. Good stuff. I then have, down the bottom, 2 LFOs and 3 envelopes, which means I have more opportunity to create more complex sounds than I would with RetroSynth because I've got more tools at my disposal. Unlike RetroSynth though, we don't have a dedicated dial for attaching LFOs and envelopes to certain things. Instead, we have this block in the middle, this big blue block, where we can tell it exactly what we want to attach to what. So this time, I'm going to attach my pitch of all 3 of my oscillators to an LFO. I can do that by going to Target here, on one of these empty boxes, currently set to off. I'm going to select pitch 1, 2, 3, which means all 3 pitches, all 3 oscillators. I'm then going to attach the source, the thing doing the affecting. In this case, I'll go for LFO2, which is just here. So the source doing the affecting, LFO2. So far, nothing will sound any different. But if I adjust this little green triangle here, we'll start to hear it in action. This is simply the amount of the effect. If I go positive all the way up, we'll hear a very extreme LFO affecting the pitch. If I bring it to the middle, hardly anything at all. If I bring it low, I'll hear the opposite, the inverse. In the case of pitch, it does sound very similar. Great, okay, now I think it's a bit too much, a bit too fast, and a bit too heavy. So I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to change the rate of my LFO. Don't forget, this is how fast that oscillator is repeating, and thus how quickly we hear that variation in pitch. So if I slow this down, we're still working free in hertz, or if we bring it down, we can bring it into global derivations of the bar. So for example, crotchets, which would be a quarter, or quavers, which would be an eighth. And the idea of keeping it synced up is it's in time with everything else in your project. It is synced to your global tempo. Great. Just like on RetroSynth, I can choose the waveform. I've got a few more choices here, such as a triangle wave or even random and noise-based waves. Let's try a square one. So already we're starting to get a more complex sound. A bit less musical, but we'll keep fiddling with it till we get what we're after. Good, let's try making another connection. This time I'm going to use LFO1 over here. The same principle, I'm going to choose something and attach it using the router here in the middle. This time I might go for my cutoff, just like I did on the RetroSynth. So, target, cutoff, I can go for cutoff 1 or cutoff 1 and 2. I'm only using number 1, so I'll go cutoff 1. Then under source, I'm going to select LFO1. As soon as I start to bring this up, we should hear this cutoff moving at this speed. There we go. Let's try making it a bit slower. Good. I'm also going to bring the pitch one down slightly because it's quite distracting. So what's happening? The cutoff and the pitch of all three are moving back and forth depending on the shape I've chosen and the speed I've chosen. With LFO1 you do get one extra parameter here, which is a delay. You can choose to delay how quickly it comes in, and again this isn't something that's super common on very many synths, it's just another opportunity to create more complex sounds. Over here we then have our envelopes, and again they're slightly different to RetroSynth. We still do have our attack, decay, sustain and release, but we have a couple of other things like time and vel, or vel for velocity. Envelope 1 incidentally is just attack and decay. The reason we have these different ones, again, an opportunity to create more complex sounds using more than one envelope. And like with RetroSynth, we can attach these to our amplitude, to our filter, but using the router here in the middle, we can attach them to pretty much anything. Let's try attaching envelope 2 to our resonance. So, I'm going to go ahead and select Reso 2, the thing being targeted. I'm going to select envelope 2 as the effector, the source. Again, if I bring that up, I'll start to hear an action. Now, one little thing I want to address is this part in the middle where it says via or via. Now, what this does is gives you an opportunity to adjust just how much the connection between these two is. So, for example, if I want to have the resonance affected by envelope 2, but I want to be able to control it, I could use the mod wheel on my keyboard, that kind of thing all the way to the left where I'm next to my pitch bend wheel. And what I can do is tell it that I want that to control how much range it's got. So for example, if I bring this green one down to here and this orange one to here, notice how all the others are green. As soon as I've used the via, it's given me an orange option, it's given me a range. When the mod wheel's low, then the connection will be low. Resonance won't be affected very much by envelope, but as soon as I put that mod wheel up, it'll be quite high. So I'm giving it a range. Good. Now one final thing to mention down here is we can also adjust the attack depending on velocity. How hard I hit that note will give me a different attack every time. I can keep these together for the same result every time, or I can spread them out to create a range. The reason I'm showing you this in addition to RetroSynth is because this is one example of a subtractive synthesizer where we have oscillator, filter, finally to our amp, but it's more complex. It gives you more options for more complex sound and doing more with things like envelopes and LFOs. A final couple of other things to mention, just while I'm on this synthesizer. One is the amount of voices. And voicing generally refers to, in music, how many things are playing at once or how things are kind of delineated in terms of, say, a bass part or a soprano part. In the case of synthesizers, it's a similar kind of thing. It's simply how many notes can be played at once. If I'm in poly or polyphonic mode, it'll give me up to 8 voices. I can play up to 8 notes at once. But I can change this by clicking and dragging. I can have a maximum of, I believe, 32, there it is, and a minimum of 1. If I set it to mono, that won't let me play more than 1 note at once. So let's put it on poly for a moment and I'll play a few notes. I'm also just going to adjust some of my parameters here to make it a bit easier to hear. As we can hear, I can play more than 1 note at once. If I put it onto mono, then it will simply shift to the latest note I played. This is quite handy for things like bass lines and for melodies, whereas poly is useful for chords. You also have legato mode, which is somewhere in the middle. Essentially, it tries to detect when you're playing a phrase and treat it as one continuous note, i.e. it's only affected by the LFOs and envelopes on one instance. Excellent. One final thing to mention over here is that a lot of synths also have a glide function. If I put this into mono, you'll hear this quite evidently. And essentially, it's how long it takes to go between notes. At the moment, I've got it set to low, so it instantly goes from one note to the next. But if I take my glide higher to, say, 100 milliseconds, we can hear it slide between those notes. Let's take it really quite high, something like a whole second. We can really hear that glide time. So again, it's quite common with melodies and bass lines to have a little bit of glide for a kind of natural sound, but also quite a kind of synthetic sci-fi kind of sound. So a final recap, we begin each synthesizer with oscillators. They then run through a filter, which removes some of the sound, be they low, high, or somewhere in the middle. The cutoff is the point at which it removes those frequencies, and the resonance is how much the volume's boosted at the point of cutoff. We have LFOs, which are low-frequency oscillators, repeating shapes that we could use to attach to other things. We don't hear them, we hear them attached to other things such as pitch or cutoff. We have envelopes, which similarly to LFOs are a modulator, but they're a one-off shape with 4 elements: attack, decay, sustain, release. We can use our router in the middle here to attach things from the top half to the bottom half, or even 2 things from the bottom half together. We use the green little triangle here to adjust the amount, how much that modulation occurs, or by using a via option, we can choose just how much the range is and be able to control that ourselves.